When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there world. How are we all? Are we rocking and rolling in Join Up Dots land? Well, you should be, because the conversations this month have been off the scale. I love them, and I actually listen back to my own shows. I know that sounds a bit weird, but I actually do, and I get inspired by them, and I'm actually the person, you know, with my guests churning them out. So we've had some great stuff, and we've got a guy on today who is going to deliver another belter in the Join Up Dots stable. I've been chatting to him already, and to be honest, I didn't even want to press record. I just fancied keep on talking to him because it's fascinating stuff. He is a man who is an example of someone who took massive action and then kept adding to the momentum created by that one act to quite literally change his life forever. A few years back in 2008, he made headlines across the world when he auctioned his entire life, his car, home, job and friends on eBay after his marriage collapsed 6 years after leaving the United Kingdom and setting up home in Australia. He earned 192 grand, and instead of settling back into domestic life with the sudden windfall, he instead decided to set off on a path which must have been unthought of even a few months earlier. He took the proceeds and made a fresh start, travelling the world armed with nothing but a list of life goals. Over 100 weeks, he tackled 100 goals, which included meeting Sir Richard Branson, running with bulls, cage diving with great white sharks, and even joining the Mile High Club. That's one for your kids to ask the mum and dad about. And now, after owning and living on his own island off the coast of Panama and becoming a speaker, writer, adventurer and traveller, his life seems a world away from his childhood in the north of England. But is it though? Did he always have this adventurous spirit as a child? And was his life just waiting for the right moment to find his unique and authentic calling? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show, to start Joining Up Dots, the one, the only, Mr. Ian Usher. How are you, Ian?
I'm great, David. Thank you. That's quite an introduction. Thank you very much.
Do you listen to those introductions? Because everyone always says to me, "Oh, that's quite an introduction," like it's not actually them. But do you listen to it like it's a third party, or do you actually go, "Yep, that's right. Yep, done that, done that, done that"?
It is interesting to listen to because I do think, yep, done that, yep, that's me, I did that. But it's when I look back sometimes, it's almost hard to believe all the things that I have done. And there is sometimes a little bit of an air of unreality about it. But I'm continuing to live an adventurous and interesting life. So it certainly, yeah, my life certainly has changed quite dramatically over the past few years.
But I've been looking back over your whole life, looking at your sort of childhood, and I've been stalking you, Ian, basically. And there's a lot of kind of adventure in your life, even as a young child in the north of England. It didn't seem to be like you were somebody that was ever going to settle and be a bank manager.
No, I don't think so. And my parents certainly are to thank for a lot of that. My mum and dad took us skiing. We went to Catterick ski slope, the dry ski slope, and learnt skiing from around the age of 10. We would go on adventure activity holidays to the Lake District, where I sort of discovered a love for climbing and canoeing and orienteering and all that sort of outdoor stuff out in the hills and the mountains of the Lake District. So certainly the early upbringing and my dad particularly, I guess his adventurous side had a big impact on the things that I liked to do early in life.
And do you obviously you remember your dad, but do you remember your dad doing anything sort of, to quote a phrase, mad? Because some of the things you've done are mad. So and that's what's made the headlines, because they are slightly mad. So was your dad kindred?
Guess, yeah. He was, yes. He was, I guess his friends would always describe him as slightly eccentric. He was an adventurous dad, and when on my 16th birthday, I wanted to do a skydive, which was under the sort of round canopy, the old style army round canopy parachutes. My dad came along and he said, "No, I'm coming, I'm doing it as well." So on my 16th birthday, it was a father and son parachute jump. He always had a motorcycle. I can remember as a kid there was always motorcycles about. He went and toured around Southern Ireland on a bike. He went across to Eastern Europe and travelled around on a motorbike in Eastern Europe. So yeah, he was always adventuring, and he was always an inspiration to me.
Your dad's first name wasn't Indiana, and Ian is just kind of like an abbreviation of that, because that doesn't sound like my dad at all. You certainly had an unusual dad compared to the people that I know, certainly.
Yeah, no, my dad's first name was actually Foster, which is an old family name. And for 4 generations, the firstborn son was called Foster Usher. But my dad, he hated it. He said that, he always said, someone will say, "Oh, what's your name?" "My name's Foster." And I'd say, no, I meant your first name. And he'd say, "That is my first name." "That's an unusual first name." And he'd have to go into this. He said, "You could never just say my name's Foster." So often when we went on holiday, he would say that his name was Frank, and he would just introduce himself as Frank. And but my mum kept calling him Foss, and people thought, "Who's that then? Why does she not know her husband's name when they're on holiday together?" So I think people just assumed my mum was having an affair when she was on holiday, because she didn't know his name was Frank when he'd introduced himself as such.
But I have the same problem with my name. My name's David Ralph. And you would have thought, basically, that the Christian name is the one that comes first, and the surname is the one that comes afterwards. But the amount
if you
of times,
put a comma though, if you put a comma in there, it could be David, comma Ralph.
Yeah,
so
I could be. I could
David,
actually be like that. And the amount of people will come back to me and say, "Hi, Ralph. Hi, Ralph." And especially Americans, there must be a lot, because the only Ralphs that I really remember are the bloke from Happy Days, and the piano playing Muppet.
Oh yes, yeah.
He was Ralph as well, wasn't he?
Ralph, he was the dog one, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have that same connection with the sort of weird names. So looking back on your childhood, because you were up in the north of England, it's a kind of cold climate, the north of England. Once you get past, but anybody out there who doesn't know the United Kingdom, you basically go past the sort of middle of the country, and then it starts getting cold and dreary. And once you get once you get sort of up the top, you don't see sunshine at all. And a lot of people still thrive on the outdoor life up there, even though the climate isn't particularly good all the time. And does that toughen you up?
I guess it does a bit, yeah. I believe summer's on a Wednesday this year up north, is it?
Just after 2:30.
Just after 2:30. It's beautiful up there as well. We've got the hills and the Lake District and the Dales areas and the North Yorkshire moors, and further up, into Scotland. There's just some amazing outdoor, not facilities, I guess, just sort of outdoor places to go and enjoy. We had there was a little ski slope, a winter ski slope, just up the Dales from where we lived, and you could drive up on a Sunday, and they had a tractor, and they just ran a big long rope off the flywheel of a tractor motor, and it dragged you up the hill with your skis on through the snow up to the top. So the outdoor possibilities are fantastic up there, but it is, as you say, it's not Cornwall. It's certainly a bit colder up there, so it does toughen you up.
Did you miss it? Now your life is so exotic, and you're whizzing around to these exotic islands and places. Is there a big part of that kind of area? I suppose you never lose your sort of formative years, but do you sort of like hanker for certain things that you had in the north of England?
Not really. I like going back. My mum still lives in Darlington, so I do get back every time I'm in the UK. I get back up north, and I lived on the coast at Scarborough for quite a long time, and I get back there to visit as well. I still have friends in Scarborough. It's such a big world, and there's so much other stuff to see out there. And life, I think, is just this forward journey. It's no good looking back and hankering for something that was, because change is inevitable, and if you go back, it's never going to be the same again anyway. So I guess you've got to have a sort of more forward look than a rearward look, I think. The thing I do miss is a good pint of English beer. It's very hard to get elsewhere in the world.
It's the simple things in life, just like that, isn't it? That you never really sort of lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Pint of Timothy Taylor's, or a Theakston's something or other. You don't get that abroad. They don't seem to brew quite the same way as they do in England.
Because I missed the kind of simple watching a simple program without 9 adverts in it.
Yeah, I haven't had a TV for years now. In Australia, I lived in Australia for a while. The adverts would they would put them in so quick fire towards the end of the movie that by the time you got to the crescendo of the movie, you couldn't care less what happened to anyone. You'd seen so many adverts, and it's the same here in the States. I'm in the US at the moment. That I'd rather rent or download something and watch it without. They can spin out a 30-minute show to an hour with the amount of adverts they put in it.
So what does your mum think? Your mum's sort of left back in Darlington. Does she kind of go, oh, go for it, I'm really proud of you, son? Or do you think there's a bit of her that would like her son to be closer to home?
Well, yeah, she'd like her son to be closer to home. My brother's out working in Abu Dhabi at the moment, so we're both pretty far flung. So we sort of, I guess, do a tag team system of going back to visit and try and get back once every year or every 2 years or so. My mum has stopped asking me, this is a big step forward. She has stopped asking me, when are you going to get a real job? So I think I've made big progress there. I've just passed 50 and she's now stopped asking me when I'm going to get a real job.
Have you had a real job? Because I know you sort of had a jet ski business and things like that in your past.
I've had a few real jobs, but only on a very short-term basis. I think I have a low boredom threshold for working and being told what to do by a boss. And my personal record is almost 3 years. When I was in Australia, I worked in one place. I did have. I went to college and I did a teaching degree in Liverpool, and I hated the teaching practice. I hated the rigid school system and being sir and the shirt and the tie and all that sort of stuff. But I really enjoyed working with the kids. And when I finished college, rather than going into schools, I ended up working in outdoor centres and ended up teaching the stuff I enjoyed doing, which was the climbing and the canoeing and the sailing and all of that sort of stuff. And thoroughly enjoyed working with the kids, but in a much less rigid and less structured environment. That was a lot more fun, and I think you can teach them a lot more as well. A kid learns pretty quickly about responsibility and teamwork and cooperation when you've got them dangling 60 foot over a cliff on the end of a rope. They pretty quickly pick up the idea of teamwork then.
It's a funny old thing that I've discovered through these conversations, because I am speaking to go-getters, motivational people, entrepreneurs. They all seem to have this kind of concept now, and I agree with this. When the first person said it to me, I went, yeah, I go with this, and now they're all saying it to me, and I'm having kids saying to me, I was speaking to a chap yesterday who's like 16 and created his first business when he was 4 and things like that, and he says that the education system is flawed. It doesn't matter what country you are in, and it's certainly, if you end up being an entrepreneur or somebody that takes risks like you have, I can see that it was an awful place in many ways to be there, because it seems to be focused on educating and not inspiring. It's almost a fear of, you've got to get your qualifications, because if you come out the other end and you don't get a job, you're going to be on the dole, you're not going to have any money coming in. Fear, where actually we should be inspiring kids to be more creative with their outlook and basically say to them, yeah, if you get your qualifications, that's great, because that's a key for you, but it's not the only thing. There's so many people out there now with the power of the internet have got the opportunity to earn money and have dream lives and travel and all those kind of things like never before. Be inspired and challenge the status quo.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of it, you see it more here in the States as well, with the college, that it's expected that everyone goes on to college afterwards. And what are you going to be? Are you going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist? Or what is it that you're working towards? And the education system does seem to be tailored to churning out a sort of cookie cutter person who's designed to fit into a job in society, and that's going to be our job for the next 40 years. And when you get to 65, you'll get your retirement, and life's going to be great then, because that's when you get to do all the stuff that you've always wanted to do. And really, I don't think that's the way it should be. You should be, as you say, inspiring people to do what it is they want to do now, and somehow figure out a way to make that pay. Make your passions and your enjoyments into what your life is about, and and somehow sort of parlay that into a business or an enterprise that pays you for doing what you love, then surely that's got to be a much better way forward in life.
I'm going to throw this little concept into you, and I am going to sort of touch on your actual movements through your life, because that's the important bit. But there's so many themes that are coming out, and it would be wrong for me not to pose them to you as well. But one of the things that have been coming out time and time again on the show, and I just want to see if it's relevant to you, is that when people say, find your passion and you never work again, most people will go, oh, I just don't know what I want to do. I know what I don't want to do because I've done it and I haven't liked it, but I don't know what I want to do. And during the conversations I've been having, it seems to be that the things that we did as children, the real small things, if we were somebody that liked the outdoor life and we liked exploring and all that kind of stuff, when we get to adulthood, we should be focusing in on those things because that is our passion. And if we liked building as a kid, then we should be looking at building somehow. And the middle bit, going through education and coming out with that fear factor of just getting a job, means that we forget what our passion is, although life has already told us. And most of us don't find it again. And that's what I'm trying to inspire in these lessons, I suppose they're lessons, where we speak to people on a daily basis, that you've already got the clues. You know what you like. It was things that you would do without getting paid, and that's what you were doing as a childhood. Well, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think that's very true. And Vanessa, my partner, just said something very similar the other week. She said she remembered when she was at school, she wanted to be a journalist. She wanted to write, and her passion was for writing and storytelling. And it's only sort of 30 years later that she's come back around to that, and now she has a blog and writes her own stuff. And she said, this is what I've always wanted to do. It's that sort of passion she had as a child. And yet, you get into the education, and you do in England. In my time, it was O levels and then A levels, and then you go to college and you get a teaching degree, and then it's expected you're going to become a teacher if you've got a teaching degree, and life takes you that way. And the one other thing that always comes to mind is when I went to college, you got an allowance when you went to college, and there was money towards your expenses, whereas now, I believe in the UK and certainly here in the States, people come out of college with a huge, huge debt hanging over their head, which forces them into a job that perhaps, if you've gone through 6 years and come out of college ready to be a lawyer, but that's not what you want to do, you don't really have a choice. You have to go and be a lawyer in order to pay back the $30,000 or $40,000 that you owe back to the government in student loans. You're sort of trapped. By the time you've got to the end of the college, you're almost trapped into doing something that perhaps wasn't what you actually wanted to do.
Fascinating stuff. I should build a whole series of podcasts on that, because it's so fascinating, and we could basically, I don't know how you would recreate the education system because it's so ingrained in how it is, but there's something wrong. And we need to do something about it, but I don't know if I'm the man to do that, Ian. But you are.
I think that's a huge subject, isn't it? And a huge undertaking, something like that. Yeah. That would be an interesting thing to study in further depth.
Inspiration. That's what I'd like. Instead of
that's what you want.
Education, it's inspiration, where people like going to school and they're learning stuff that teaches them life skills so that they can come out at the other end with half a chance of doing what they want.
Absolutely.
So let's jump back in time, because the reason that we got you on the show is the journey that you've been on, and it's been nutballs basically. It's been crazy, but your life changed so dramatically. But with everything in Join Up Dots, we know that although it might seem dramatic, there was a journey that you was on. And so the moment on 2008 when you decided to sell your entire life on eBay and made sort of headline news, how did that sort of build up? Was that sort of just instant, this is what I'm going to do? Or was it laying in bed one night, oh, this would be a laugh, I could do this. Oh, no, I'm really going to do this. Did it sort of build up that way?
Yeah, it was more, I can actually remember when the idea came. I was driving trucks in a mine in Western Australia, and it was while driving down into the pit one day. I was doing long 12-hour shifts, and it was after my wife and I had separated, and I ended up with the house and all of the contents as part of our sort of financial distribution of the assets. I ended up with a house that we'd shared and all the furniture and bits and pieces that went with it. And I'd been living in that for about a year, surrounded by these memories of a part of life that was obviously over for me, thinking, well, maybe, you know, I need to get rid of the house. It's time to sell the house. It's time to get rid of the furniture. Perhaps a bit of travel is what I want to do next. You know, how do I get rid of the house? Maybe I have to sell it furnished with all the furniture in it. I've got to get rid of the car. You know, if I'm going to travel, the car and the motorbike and the jet ski have to go. And it was just a, you know, sort of sudden blinding flash of, wait a minute, what if I packaged everything together and put it together as my whole life for sale, that I would literally let someone else step in where I was going to leave off, and I would be free and clear to go and travel and it was all about making a fresh start for me, you know, underlining that's the end of that part of my life. This is the start of the next part of my life.
But you can see that with the house and the car. I understand that totally. But you put your friends on there and everything and your job.
I do have to stress, I was asked about this many times. There was a lot of interviews about it. I do have to stress, I always said what I was offering was an introduction to my circle of friends. I never ever claimed I was selling my friends. I wouldn't sort of presume ever that I could do that. I just wanted to offer the whole life package and sort of figured out a way to offer a trial period. I moved from the trucks back into the rug store I'd been working in and was able, because that was a little family business, the couple that ran it said, oh, this sounds like a lot of fun. Yes, we will happily, you know, if you're stepping out, we'll happily give someone a trial period at your job as well. So that I could package this thing. You know, I knew it was a quirky idea. I knew I needed, if I was going to auction this as a single item, I knew I needed to get some publicity. So it had to have that sort of quirkiness in of an introduction to friends, a whole complete life package for sale. So that was the thinking behind it.
The question that sort of came up when you were saying that, because when I said about you put your friends on there, I kind of just thought, well, obviously he hasn't put his friends on there because you can't sell people. But interviewers were assuming that you were selling people.
Well, I was asked, you know, a lot of interviewers don't do the kind of in-depth research that you've obviously done. And one of the very early questions I would always get is, how can you possibly sell your friends? And I'd have to say every time, now, wait a minute, you know, I made this very clear. There was a whole website detailing exactly what I was selling. You know, look, I've made this very clear. I'm not selling my friends. I've never said I'm selling my friends. I've always said that some of my good friends are prepared to offer an open arms welcome to whoever steps into my shoes when I go. And what I was wanting to offer was a real easy step into lifestyle, so that perhaps someone who was emigrating from England over to Australia could simply step in. They've got the house, they've got all the crockery and the knives and forks, the car's ready for them to step into. There's a circle of friends who can tell them where the best pub is, or, you know, where to go and get a pizza, or whatever it is they needed to know. That there was literally a step into it lifestyle ready for someone who was going to turn up in Perth, Australia. That was my thinking behind it.
Well, did any of your mates say to you, Ian, if you sell it for a hot bird. Make sure that it's a real good one for us.
Oh, there was all sorts of requests from all sorts of friends. Yeah, different people were like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, a couple of girls, or some just wanted a family, you know, nice neighbours, nice family as neighbours. Yeah, there was all sorts of interest in who might be the type of person who was in. There was talk at one point of, I thought it would be really good because there was a huge amount of worldwide publicity about it. And I thought, what a great promotion tool that would be for maybe a producer who was wanting to launch a singer or a rock band, or someone who wanted to promote a book or whatever it was they were doing, because there was an awful lot of press interest in who it was that was going to buy the life and why they would buy that and what they wanted to do with it. And I thought, what a great promotional tool for someone launching their singing career or something. But that it never quite turned out that way. But
and are you in contact with the person that bought your life?
Well, things didn't quite go to plan. You know, life always has challenges and difficulties to put up in front of you. And the final bidder at the end, the auction itself had a couple of hiccups, and it was meant to be registered bidders only. but we couldn't get that switched on at the very start. And very quickly on, the bids got to $2.2 million, which was all very exciting. I was actually interviewed live on Australian TV and asked, what is it like to become an overnight multimillionaire? And I said, well, let's just all hold our horses here. You know, we're not sure who these bids are, and I don't think we're quite up to the $1 million mark yet.
That's very English, isn't it? The way you acted then.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know, let's just all hang on a second. And it turned out it was a 15-year-old kid up in Newcastle who'd been putting fake bids on. And I actually got to speak to his mother because when someone bids on an auction, you were in a transaction with them and you can access all their details. And the phone number's there. So I rung this number up and I said to the lady, I said, oh, I'm looking for Bill. I can't remember what his name was. I'm looking for Bill. And she's, oh, he's out at the moment, pet. And I said, well, will he, you know, he's bidding on something on eBay and it's, he buys a lot of stuff on that eBay, like. I said, so is this your husband? She said, oh, no, it's my nephew. He doesn't live here, like. He uses my number because he hasn't got a phone of his own. And I said, well, he's bidding on a very expensive item. Oh, he buys a lot of stuff. I said, his current bid is about $2.2 million. She said, oh, I'll kill the cheeky little bugger. And I said, well, I think you better get him to retract his bid if he hasn't got the money to pay for it, because you're going to end up with the world's press on your doorstep in 6 days if he continues as he's going. Oh, I'll bloody kill the little bugger, I will.
But that's you know, that is the fascinating thing about these things, isn't it? That you only get one side of the story. So on one side of it, it just like you put it on eBay, you became not wealthy, but you had a nice windfall overnight and everything was plain sailing. But of course, when you sort of get behind it, there's issues, there's hassles, there's obstacles, as you were saying, to deal with. And
endless hassle. And the final bidder, when the final bid was $399,300, which was just about the valuation of the house. So I do quite well out of that. I paid quite, you know, working in the mines, I paid quite a lot off the house, and I built up quite a sum of equity in it. And I rung the final bidder on. I said, oh, fantastic, you know, when are we going to get, I better go and speak to the bank about a loan then. And I just thought, you know, I tried to sort this out with everyone beforehand, be in a position financially to go ahead, because I wanted to do this as soon as the final bid comes in. Let's get on with it. But, I better go and speak to the bank. And where's the house again? I'm not quite sure where you are in Perth. And it was endless difficulties. But ultimately, I did achieve what I wanted to do, which was clear the decks, get rid of everything, and make a fresh start, you know, go and set off on my travels and adventures.
And where was it in Perth? Because I know Perth quite well. I've got relatives down there, and I've stayed in Bassendean several times.
Oh, okay, yeah. It was down south of there. It was south of the city centre, below Fremantle, and then down the Southern Freeway, about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour south of the city itself. And just in from the coast, you know, short drive out to the beaches. Beautiful house, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. You know, the Australian style, big block, beautiful home. So it's lovely lifestyle, lovely place to live is Perth, and perfect summer weather.
Now, the brilliant thing about that, you've now got your money, and for many people, they would go back to the life that they were leading before. They would have had that money, they would have been single for a little while, they met somebody new, and then basically replicated. And you see that all the time, where somebody will go, I hate this job, I'm not going to stay here anymore, I hate being a lawyer, what are you going to do? I've got this new job at a law company, and you think, why are you doing the same thing again? But you didn't. You took that money and you really did make the most of it.
I did as well, and I didn't really have that planned out when I first said, you know, I had this sort of vague idea of travel and a new start and some adventure, but it was very, very vague. And in the interviews, I was asked, in almost every interview, what will you do once you've sold your life? And my usual blasé answer was, I'll be able to do whatever the heck I like, won't I? Because, you know, I'll have money in my pocket, no ties, and nothing to hold me back. But that did cause me to question, what is it that I want to do? You know, what do I really want to do with my life? And I sort of pulled out. I've always had lists of goals and things I want to do and places I want to go. And I pulled all these lists together and started collating them into one big list. This is what I'm going to do. And it was another flash of an idea. I'm going to make that a list of 100 things. I'm going to do 100 goals. How long is that going to take me? 100 days, not too short. 100 months, a bit too long. 100 weeks, 100 goals in 100 weeks. That's it. That's what I'm going to do next. And there it was. I started working on this list of goals. And pretty much after the auction finished, I was up and away and got my teeth into this big long list of stuff I'd always wanted to do.
I'm going to play a little speech at this moment because I think it emphasises this point exactly. You found the thing that you want to do. Obviously, there's a risk involved in it, but you haven't allowed the risk to hold you back. You're going for the thing that you're passionate about. Have a listen to this.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Now, that's exactly what you did, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That makes the hairs rise up on the back of your neck a little bit. That's fantastic because, it's so easy to get trapped into that. I think we're all sold this idea of security, talks of security or safety there, and that, get a job, start working your way up the career ladder, and you're saving towards your pension, and there's that sort of dream of security. But it really is all smoke and mirrors. Certainly now, I don't think, any job security. No one's going to have the same job for the same company from the day they leave college till the day they retire. So, even that sort of dream of security no longer exists. So if you're going to be doing something, you may as well be doing something you love, not something that you hope is going to give you that wishy-washy feeling of security.
I was watching you on the telly the other day. We were talking about this just before we started recording, and I was sitting with my son, and my son's 12, and he's hugely intelligent. He's just at that age that he thinks his dad's an idiot, and he's more intelligent than I am, which we all kind of go through that phase. And I'm trying to inspire him and really to go for his dreams. And his big dreams are basically to be the new Top Gear presenter. He would love to do that. Or to be something to do with designing of cars. And we were watching you on your island on this program, Ben Fogle, and I said to him, this chap the other day, I'm going to be talking to him, and I said, I'm going to ask him what his biggest dream was when he was a kid. And I bet he doesn't say what he's doing now. And Dan, who's my son, I said, you're at the age of 12. If you start thinking about what you really want at this age, you've got a head start on so many people. And if you do want to become the new presenter of Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson's not going to last forever. Put yourself in a position and keep going for it, and you're gonna have a head start. And so I'm going to ask the question, flip it on its head. That was our conversation, but do you know what your dream was when you was a 12-year-old, when you were sitting on the sofa with your dad?
I can remember when I was 12, absolutely, that one of my huge passions was to become a scuba diver. And I didn't care in what shape or form that would be. I read books about guys who worked as police divers, guys who worked as marine biologists, guys who just went on diving holidays and dived around the world, books about the Barrier Reef and about the sharks and the whales. And I wanted to be a diver, and that sort of morphed as I went through school into a passion for or an idea that I might become a marine biologist. I always imagined, working out in some beautiful lagoon somewhere with dolphins and studying dolphin habits and so on. Unfortunately, when I got to A levels at school, chemistry was one of the big needs to become a marine biologist. I did pretty good in physics and biology, but failed miserably at chemistry. So I had to do a bit of rethinking after my A levels. But I do, I've been a scuba diver pretty much since I was 16. The island in Panama is just around the corner from a place called Dolphin Bay. We see dolphins pretty much every time we go out in the boat. And the goals that I did on the list of goals, I swam with whales, I did shark cage diving, I swam in open water with hammerhead sharks, and there's, I still see now, I guess it's an interesting question. When I look back, some of the things I'm doing now are still related to those childhood passions, although in a different form. I never became a marine biologist, but I still have get a great enjoyment from those same elements of those same things that I was passionate about at 12. So for Dan, absolutely keep working towards that. It may not be Top Gear, but who knows? He might have his own show that's just as successful, or life might take him a slightly different route. But if you follow those passions, then whatever you end up doing, I'm sure you're going to end up enjoying doing it.
Yeah, and with technology now, I've said this a few times, but when I left school, I wanted to be on the radio. And I just loved being on the radio, the thought of being on the radio. Yeah. And I wrote off a few letters and stuff, and I got rejections, and that was it. I went into a bank, and I was in a bank for sort of like 20 years. And now I've created my own radio show, basically. And it's a radio show that is going out across the globe and is getting more and more listeners and more downloads and stuff. And I think to myself, 20 years ago, if you wanted to become the presenter of Top Gear, for example, you had to go the route and you had to get on the BBC and all that kind of stuff. But now, by being creative and using the power of the internet, you can basically create your own Top Gear if you wanted to. You can create your own TV program. It's so mind-blowing when you think the options that kids have got now, and especially that they're talented at using computers and all that kind of stuff, and they're all walking around at 4-year-olds with tablets and phones and God knows what, that really they don't need to think that they've got to get a job. I would like them to think, create a job and create my dream
Absolutely.
job.
Absolutely. It's all there to be able to do that. As you say, now you can, with a little digital camera, you can record amazing high quality video. You can edit that professionally. You can, upload stuff to YouTube, or you can live stream it, so you can actually put on a live show. I think Google Plus and Google Hangouts are an amazing location for what people are doing with live streaming and interactive shows. You can have the audience sort of talking to you as you're presenting a show and asking questions live as you present it. You can self-publish books. You can work. There's so many jobs now that you can be on a beach in Thailand with a laptop on your knee and earn your income that way. I think that, as you say, technology in 20 years has changed the face of work, and whatever it is that you want to do, I'm sure there's a way out there that you can figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Just look at your passions as a kid. Look at the things you love doing, and then be creative. And that's really the way. Now, Ian, you
absolutely
with your 100 goals, and I'm actually looking at your website at the moment, and I've got these images flashing in front of me, and some of them I kind of think, yeah, I can understand that. I'm looking at wing walking in England. So you're on a plane. And the plane is flying along. I think, yeah, okay, that would be quite exciting. I can see that. But then I'm seeing things like the Wall of Death, going around the Wall of Death on a motorbike. I couldn't even comprehend having that on my 100 goals. Ostrich riding in South Africa, there's another one. Were these goals that occurred to you at the time, or did you sit there at the table and you just kept on writing them?
A little bit of both. The Wall of Death was something, again, Dad took us to the town moor at Newcastle, and the Wall of Death at the travelling fairground. I must have seen that first when I was 10 or 11 or something. And I was just absolutely wowed by that. For anyone that doesn't know, it's the vertical wooden barrel where they ride a motorcycle up the inside wall, and theory's simple. If you go fast enough, you can ride around on the vertical wall and go up and up the inside of the big wooden cylinder. And when I was writing out my list of goals, I don't know what it was that reminded me, and I thought, I've always been keen on motorbikes. As I said before, Dad was a motorcyclist from before I could ever ride them, and I just thought, surely that can't be too hard. The theory is simple. I can ride a motorbike. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn, but it was one of the most fun, most fun weekends I've ever had as well.
Well, what was it? It was the fear of actually doing it, or was it a sort of technical aspect that you had to overcome?
Both. Fear. Three things really. Fear, complete disorientation. It's such an your mind can't quite accept what it's seeing. I think when you're tipped over sideways and going up the wall, and also just the challenge of learning a new skill. That there's a real pleasure, I think, in pushing yourself through that fear and that disorientation and overcoming the challenge. And ultimately, it was such a huge thrill on the afternoon of the second day when the guy teaching me, he just said one thing about push up with the bottom hand, push the bottom handlebar, and suddenly everything clicked into place. And I thought, I've got it, and just pushed this bike up the wall, and it just glided up the wall. It's fantastic. And I guess, anyone who's attempted anything difficult and ultimately succeeded in doing it knows that thrill of overcoming those difficult challenges. I think that's what life's about. You're not meant to live a life that's easy doing the stuff you've always been able to do. You've got to keep stretching yourself, whether it's learning a new language or developing a new skill, anything like that. Life's all about challenging yourself, or for me it is anyway.
Well, I think it is. And for years, I was in the comfort zone. And I went to a job, and I did my job, and I got paid my salary, and I came back. And I look back on it, and I kind of wish it was worse. Because I think if it was worse, I would have done something about it. But because it was just kind of pleasant, and I would have a few beers in the evening, and I'd come home on the train, and then I'd go again the next day, nothing really happened in my life. I just floated. But I came to a crossroads where my life was not good, and I wasn't happy, so I did something about it. Best thing that I've ever done. But now I totally buy into what you're saying. It is the challenges, it's the obstacles, it's the things that you look at and you think, I'd like to do this, but I've got no idea how to do it. But once you start breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and some of the stories I've been hearing on the shows, Ian, it really does blow my mind. I could sit here for 3 hours telling you the stories that people have overcome these things that you think it's not possible, but it purely comes down to it's only impossible because it hasn't been done. And as soon as you do it, you think, well, okay, what shall I do now? And it's that incremental gains, that building up that confidence that you've been doing, that really can, well, the world's your oyster, isn't it?
It is as well. And I think it's only impossible. A lot of things are only impossible if you keep telling yourself they're impossible. Then for you, it is impossible. And until you develop a mindset of, I'm going to figure out a way to make this possible, I'm going to find out how to make this happen, it's only then that you can start achieving the more extraordinary things. I think you have to, there's a huge part of it is mindset and a belief in yourself and a belief in your own abilities.
The only one that I kind of think is impossible is getting into the Mile High Club. How that happens nowadays with security, I'm not going to touch on that because it's a family show. But
family show.
Yeah, family show. We don't know who's listening to that. Was there any on your list of 100 goals that when you were actually doing it, you thought, oh, this is actually rubbish. I thought this was going to be great, but it's just grim.
There was none that were grim, but there were certainly some that were a disappointment compared to, I guess, what they could have been, because so many of my goals were stuff that you see, the sort of National Geographic type stuff, swimming with whales, diving with sharks, all this sort of stuff. Then the images you see on TV, you sort of have to remember that a camera crew's perhaps spent 6 months until they get that amazing image of the guy diving with the whale and the baby. And yet I seem to be so lucky for many of the goals I set. And I got that moment where, we jumped in the water and there's a mother humpback and a baby about 10 feet in front of us in the water. And she just sat there and looked at us. And the photographs from that are like an image out of the National Geographic magazine. But there were disappointments as well. And the worst one, the one that stands out in my mind as the worst one, was in South Africa. I wanted to do the shark cage diving, where you put in the water in a cage with the big great white sharks outside. And I appreciate the elements. Nobody has control over the elements. The water was really murky and you could hardly see your hand in front of your face in the water. And the sharks did come and they thrashed around the cage, and every now and then you'd see a fin swim by in the murk and you get a bit of a sort of idea of the outline of this thing. But it was a big disappointment not to see, wow, look at the big shark there. But the worst thing about it was the operator who ran the tour and they sold themselves as Shark Eco Ventures or something. I can't remember the exact name, but they had eco in the title. So I thought we were going to get a bit of an overview of the lifestyle of the shark and the breeding habits and where they live and what they eat and why they're misunderstood. None of that at all. His major concern was, are you paying with cash or a credit card? And then out on the boat, I saw the most amazing customer service ever. They were chumming the blood and the fish heads into the water, and everyone's up on deck of this boat, and a shark came swimming by. And the operator pointed at it. He said, there, everyone, quick, there. Have you seen it? Right, everyone's seen it, so no one can ask for a refund. And my mouth just dropped open. I've never seen such rubbish customer service in all my life. So that always stands out to me as the biggest disappointments. Don't go with Great White Eco Adventures or what they were called. They were rubbish.
We're gonna brand them all over this episode. We're gonna bring them to their knees. They're messing with the wrong people, Ian.
They are.
We have got powers. And so now I suppose the fascinating thing really with this story, because it is one of those stories that when I was introduced to you, I started delving into you, as I say. And the more I delved in, the more I kind of went, okay, blimey, this takes me into a different area and this takes me into a different area. So you've done all these things. You finish off your goals where you kind of go, job done. But then the mighty mouse himself comes along and says to you, I want to buy your story. I want to make it into a Disney film. Now, that is kind of beyond, once again, beyond anything you would have comprehended at the beginning. It would have been a personal journey for you. But now, once again, it takes you into the, into everybody's consciousness. And a Disney film could be around forever. Well, they are, aren't they?
They are. That was amazing. That started, the interest in that actually started very early on. After the initial round of publicity, the UK newspapers and UK breakfast TV, and then Australian breakfast TV, and then American TV. And then I started getting these phone calls from producers in Hollywood. And one of the funniest ones I had was a woman from Universal. And she rang me up and she said, oh, we saw this on the news today and we think it's fantastic, Ian, what you're doing. We see this as a Tom Hanks type of rom-com. And I just answered. It came straight out of my mouth, a sort of glib English answer. I said, Tom Hanks? No. I rather imagine George Clooney playing me. And she didn't pick up any other sort of humour in my voice at all. And this sort of deadpan answer came back saying, yeah, we could possibly make that happen. And I just thought, I've strayed out of my depth a little bit here. But ultimately, I ended up, I always feel a bit of a faker when I say I ended up with a Hollywood agent who sort of looked after this whole thing for me, and he brokered a deal with Walt Disney Pictures, and they bought an option at first, which meant I couldn't tell the story to anyone else, and then ultimately coughed up to buy the movie rights to the story, and I guess they're still waiting to get George Clooney under contract. I think he's a little bit busy with the new wife at the moment, but once the honeymoon period dies down, I think we'll be ready to get him pinned down and under contract, I hope.
In all seriousness, though, I know George Clooney is a good-looking chap. Who would you like? Who would you be going, oh, yeah, actually, I admire that actor and he'd be good playing me?
I personally would like if, I'd have a slight fear of them making an Americanized version of it, and it being George Clooney or someone like that, or Jim Carrey, like he did with Yes Man. I'd much rather they made an anglicized version of it. And for me, my number one pick would be Ewan McGregor. So if you're ever chatting to him, just pass on the word that I think he's the fella to play the role, and he'd be a lot of fun to hang out with on set as well, I think.
I could see that. Or Anthony Hopkins. I know he'd be an older version of you, but I think he would have your kind of sense of humour, because your sense of humour and my sense of humour is definitely in English, and it's a sort of self-depreciating sense of humour, isn't it?
That's why I think it has to be an English version of the movie. It would be so far removed from reality. When they say sort of based on a true story, I think if they made an Americanized version of it, it really wouldn't, as you say, reflect that quirky Britishness about the whole thing.
But I do love the Yes Man. I think the message of the Yes Man film, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, get it on Netflix or whatever, because, you know, it's a typical Jim Carrey film, but it's got a lovely message of taking action and trying things. And your life could be the Yes Man as well, couldn't it, really?
Yeah, I would tell anyone, no, forget the movie, get Danny Wallace's book and read the book. I think the book is far, far better than the movie, and is far truer than the movie is. The movie's good, but I think the book is, they could have done a better version of the movie from the book that Danny Wallace wrote. But yeah, you know, I think to sort of answer that, yeah, life is about adventure, and the more stuff you say yes to, the bigger the adventure tends to be. You know, if you say, oh, if someone says, do you want to go and do this? Do you want to, you know, let's go out and let's take the boat out on the lake or whatever it is. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. Or you could just stay at home and read a book and nothing's going to change. Saying yes to stuff, I think, is certainly part of life's adventure.
If you say no, as you say, it's going to stay exactly as it is. But you say yes, you never know what you're going to get.
Exactly, and what I've done, I guess, is true testament to that. You know, I never knew I was going to start with, even put my life up for sale on eBay. I didn't know I was going to do 100 goals in 100 weeks. I didn't know I was going to end up writing a book about that and then selling the rights to that story to Walt Disney. I didn't know that I'd end up spending Walt Disney's money on a little Caribbean island. All of those have stemmed from choices I've made, and have all been saying yes to something.
Well, let's play Steve Jobs' words, because they really emphasise what we're saying there, and it is the emphasis of the whole show. So this is the words of Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
Now, we could change that to sort of a North Country accent and have you saying it, and it would be absolutely perfect, wouldn't it? Because that is your life.
It is, and I think there's a real little parallel in there in his last couple of little lines to two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I picked the least one, and that has made all the difference. You know, I think picking that different path through life and not following the standard formula and doing what it is that your heart tells you that you want to do, I think that's where real quality of life comes from, is making those decisions that going forward, you don't know where they're going to lead you. You don't know how your dots are going to join up in the future, but they will. You know, something's going to happen. It's probably going to be a lot of fun, and definitely that's how life should be. Take that less worn path.
And now you're travelling a path with your lovely partner, Vanessa, who you met after everything has kind of settled down, I suppose, and the sort of goals were coming to an end. And you're creating your own goals, and you're creating combined goals for the two of you.
Yeah, we are. Our meeting was a sort of chance passing in London. I was staying, I needed somewhere to stay for a couple of nights in London, and a friend who I'd met while travelling in Australia, she said, oh, I've got a spare room in my house, and Vanessa was renting a room there, and we just ended up, we were all hanging out for one evening. Vanessa and I got chatting. We went out to a concert, actually, and Vanessa and I got chatting, and pretty much found we had a lot of similar interests and a lot in common. And my chat-up line is, hey, if you want to come and visit, I've got an island in the Caribbean. And it seemed to work a treat. And 3 or 4 months later, Vanessa came out to visit. She was, I'm looking at her, she's laughing now at me. She came out to visit for 2 weeks. And we, really figured out that, yes, we did have a lot in common. And I found out how much we had in common when within those 2 weeks, she resigned from work, told a friend back in London that I'm going to send my brother to collect my clothes and car. I'm not coming back. I'm staying in Panama. So, yeah, very, very similar to me in that's it. I've changed, different direction. I'm doing something new now.
And the two of you on that television program, I was really touched by the warmth and companionship that the two of you have developed. But I was also touched by the fact that it was the simple things. I know you've had amazing things in your life, and you sort of look back, and you deserve them all because you've done them and you've gone out there and you've grabbed it. But it seemed to me that the two of you were very happy with just the simple things, and an evening treading on dirty clothes in a bucket seemed to make Vanessa happier than she'd been for years and years and years.
It's so romantic, isn't it? That section, yeah, the clothes washing. There is actually a laundry in town, so it's only occasionally the clothes get stamped in a bucket. But it's, I often get this, that people say, oh, sorry, we're not taking you skydiving or jet boating or water skiing or something. And I say, well, it's not, my life doesn't have to be adrenaline and fueled every minute of the day. There's a lot of pleasure in life's simple pleasures, just the day-to-day stuff. And if you're doing it with someone who you thoroughly enjoy spending time with, then I think that's all the better. Vanessa and I have been together now for the past year and a bit, 24 hours a day, pretty much constantly for the year. So as it came up on Ben Fogle's show, I think the relationship gets tested very quickly when you suddenly thrust together into a little life together on a small island. It certainly tests the relationship, and we're finding out that it's working very well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, good on you. Good on both of you. So just before we put you on the very end part of the show, which is the bit that we call a sermon on the mic, and we send you back in time to give your younger self a one-on-one pep talk, what's in your plans now? You're obviously in your RV and you're travelling around America, and you've got so many things that you are creating, and you've got opportunities coming out. But what do you have dreams, or is it kind of a bit humdrum now?
No, it's not humdrum at all. I guess we're at another sort of transition point in that we traveling in the States at the moment. I've been doing a bit of inspirational speaking here, and I've found that I really enjoy that. I do think I've got a message for younger people, and I guess I'll talk to my younger self about that in a moment. We've been enjoying that, but we can only be in America for 90 days at a time, and we just got back yesterday from Mexico and got taken into the immigration interview room. They had a lot of questions for us about what we were doing and how we were funding it and where we were going. And you've got a vehicle here and you've got a bank account here. How can that be? So we're thinking at the end of this 3-month period, we may need to head back to Europe to reset our US visas and do something a bit different. So, life's an adventure. I have no idea what I'll be doing in 6 months' time or in a year's time. If Disney gets on with the movie, who knows where that might lead? Or, I'm starting to do this public speaking. I don't quite know where that's going to lead. But it's all part of the adventure and part of the fun.
It is an adventure, isn't it? You love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. And that's, life's supposed to be like that. I think that we're all supposed to be living our own adventure, whatever that is.
I think it's fascinating. It really is. And it's going to be fascinating hearing the advice that you give to your younger self. So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you've been transported back in time. And what type of age, Ian, would you choose? Would you choose the 16-year-old skydiving with your dad? Would it be the one out in Australia before the eBay? Totally up to you. But I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you're up. And this is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
All right, I'm going to talk to Ian in the early 80s, the Ian who's at college in Liverpool. And the first bit of advice for him that I've got is, Ian, that long hair is going to have to go soon. You can't have the big 80s hairdo for too much longer. To the Ian of that period, I guess I would say you're going to enjoy life. You're heading in the right direction. You've already got a great outlook on life as an adventure and the activities that you enjoy, I think you're going to continue, I know you're going to continue enjoying long into the future. What I would say, the piece of advice is that you don't need to get trapped into a job that perhaps isn't exactly what you want to be doing. Look more at what it is that you want to be doing, and don't wait. This is my big piece of advice. Don't wait for life to shock you into making the choices that you really want to make. And for future Ian, there's going to be a couple of big shocks coming. One of those big shocks we can chat about afterwards if you like, David. One of those big shocks is really going to make you assess life and the fact that it is very short. You only get one turn at doing it, and you have no idea when it's going to come to an end. So whatever it is in your mind that you want to get on with, right now is the time to be getting on with that, not in 10 years, 20 years' time, or 40 years' time when you retire. Whatever it is that you've got on a list that you want to do, now is the time to be getting on with that. That's my advice for you, Ian.
How can our audience connect with you, Ian?
I'm pretty easy to find. As the guy who introduced me to you said, simply Google me. If you type in Ian Usher into a Google search, you'll find me. My website is ianusher.com. My preference for contacting me, there is a contact page on the website. Get in touch via the contact page, send me a message. I will get back to you. I promise you that. I'm on Facebook and on Twitter and on Google+. I don't tend to get to those quite so often. When I'm traveling, I guess you don't get as much internet access as you do if you just sort of sat at home. So send me a message via the website page, ianusher.com, and I'll get back to you if anyone needs to speak to me.
Ian, I've loved having you on the show today. You're an absolute inspiration to me, and I thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. So please come back again when you do have more dots to join up, because I believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Ian Usher, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.